Some breaking news is now coming in. The Indian Army has released a statement on the situation at the line of actual control with China, and the Army has said that both sides were engaged in discussions to de-escalate the situation in Ladakh. The statement said that the commander-level talks on the 14th of July were consistent with the consensus reached between the special representatives from India and China on the 5th of July. The Indian and Chinese commanders reviewed the progress made in the first phase of disengagement and discussed further steps. The two sides also reiterated their commitment to the objective of complete disengagement. The Indian Army has described the process as intricate and needing constant verification. Now remember, this is a de-escalation between the border standoff between India and China that took place in Galwan Valley, and now the recent update that we have for you is the Indian Army saying that both sides were in fact engaged in discussions to de-escalate the situation in Ladakh, where the border standoff took place. And this border standoff was followed by statements from both sides. In fact, India banned about 59 Chinese apps that were operational in India and are now no longer operational. As of now, the Indian Army has said that commander-level talks took place on the 14th of July and they were consistent with the consensus. Now, for more updates on this story, Siddhant Sibal, our diplomatic correspondent, is joining us live. Siddhant, tell us, what does this mean? This is obviously a clear sign of de-escalation. So tell us more.
Well, the first and the official statement by the Indian side, by the Indian Army on the 14th of July talks, the military talks which took place between India and China. This, of course, was the first talks this month, but fourth talks since 6th of June when the first conversations happened. But a short statement has been released a short while ago by the Indian Army, and the statement talks about this disengagement process, how they are focusing on the process which has already taken place and now focusing on the next step forward. But what is important, the last para of the statement says that it's an intricate process and it will require verification. The fact that the Indian Army has mentioned verification shows that there is a cautiousness this time dealing with the Chinese, because last time after the 6th of June talks, the Chinese went against the consensus and that led to the violent face-off on 15th of June. So by and large, the Indian Army confirming that disengagement has happened and progress is on, steps are being taken by both sides.
Right. Now, Siddhant, as you rightfully mentioned, that this is obviously an intricate process, which is also what the government has highlighted, and the government is being cautious in dealing with China. And of course, over the last few weeks, we've seen reactions and retaliation from both sides, with India also banning 59 Chinese apps. And now, of course, we're hearing that both sides are committed to de-escalation on the border. So tell us what really lies ahead in the coming few days and weeks.
Well, the next step forward is the process of disengagement, that it continues and there is a verification on the ground. That is the emphasis of the statement by the Indian Army. We know the Chinese have already reacted. Yesterday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson reacted, but that was a generic statement talking about the positive aspects that both sides have agreed and continue to engage through diplomatic and military means. We know that on diplomatic side as well, both sides have been engaging. There were talks last week, the latest rounds of diplomatic talks, but by and large 4 rounds of conversations have happened at the military level, 3 rounds last month, and progressively there has been an increase in the time period, because we know that on 14th of July when talks took place, the talks ended at 2 a.m. Indian Standard Time, that's 4:30 a.m. Beijing time. The talks lasted for 15 hours. Before that, the talks lasted for approximately 11 and 12 hours on 22nd and 30th of June. So the talks are taking place. Both sides are now hoping that only through talk that there is no repetition of what happened on 15th of June when we know that there were casualties on both sides. 20 Indian soldiers lost their lives, and both sides are eager that there is no repetition of that incident. But we are dealing with a very aggressive China, and you never know what Chinese do next.
Right. Now, you mentioned an aggressive China, and the timing of this de-escalation also needs to be highlighted, because this comes on a day or at a time when there is global action being taken against China. We know about the tensions between US and China, Trump's executive order, as well as the fate of Huawei in the 5G situation in the UK. And obviously now this news of de-escalation. So can we also talk about the timing of this?
Well, China has been very aggressive since the start of this year, and this coming amidst the COVID pandemic, a virus whose first case came from China, and we have seen since then the aggressiveness has led to a lot of reaction, not only from India but other neighbors of China, including from Japan. Just few days ago, the Japanese came out with white paper on defense, talking about the Chinese aggressiveness, and of course we know the right now situation between Washington and Beijing. So clearly the world is divided between China and the rest, and now of course we have seen progressively pressure increasing on Beijing. But Beijing has its own ways. Beijing sees the world in a new way. It sees the rise of China, and it perhaps is looking at the COVID crisis an opportunity, a God-given perhaps opportunity to make sure that China is the global superpower. But it looks difficult as of now, because increasingly Washington, New Delhi, Tokyo, Canberra and other countries are coming together. We know yesterday only India-EU summit took place, and clearly if we look at the wordings of both the EU leadership and the Indian Prime Minister, they specifically emphasized on the need that democratic nations should come together.
Right. Siddhant, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and for all your inputs on this story. We'll come back to you for more as this story develops.